All right, podcast audience, YouTube audience, it's Load the Box, it's Jordan, and it is Will the Bad Loser Good Win. Follow him on x.com at Will Bad Lose, and check out the Bad Loser blog. Will, man, oh man, the Vikings win again. They move to 6-2. They are in second place in the division, game and a half, I guess, technically behind the Lions. That Week 18 showdown is going to loom all season. Is that fair? Do you think? Do you get that vibe?
I think so. I mean, at least deep into the season. We'll see if it, actually matters for Lions Vikings head-to-head comparison. Let's say the Lions have a 2-game lead at that point. It might not matter for their, head-to-head, but it's going to be one of those seasons, at least it feels like, because the NFC North schedule this year it feels a little lighter. The AFC South is not good, and the NFC West is not having as good of a year as I think many people would have thought. And so you're sort of running into a softer schedule for the NFC North. And so it's going to be one of those years where I think there's going to be a lot of NFC North teams with the weaker schedule, with the strong play of the division on top of it. It's going to be a week-to-week thing where we're watching the Packers and watching the Lions, and the way in which their games, go is going to matter a lot. So it's going to be fun. Scoreboard watching in week 10 is sometimes silly, but it also it kind of makes sense this year because, like you said, those week 17, 18 games are going to be super valuable, super vital. Maybe not for the division, but definitely for wild card and just playoff positioning in general.
Yeah, and it could be the determining factor between having to play. I don't know who the 2 seed's going to end up being. Philadelphia in Philly in round 1. Getting a chance to go play like Atlanta. I'm not going to say Tampa Bay. I'm going to give it to Atlanta right now. Tampa Bay is very banged up. So, like an Atlanta, I don't know. Washington doesn't look like a bunch of scrubs, so it's really tough to say. I guess Atlanta would be the team that it's like, I would rather play them. If I have to play one of the division winners, it would have to be them. But there's also a good chance that it does end up being like hey, winner takes the division. We need the Lions to slip up.
Seed.
What'd you say?
And the 1 seed. It's probably going to, it could come down to that.
And it's very real that could happen. I'm not going to count any chickens before they hatch. I'm just pointing it out that, the Vikings have a pretty favorable schedule ahead of them. The Lions have some tough opponents coming up, and yeah, I could very easily see that game coming down to winner take all. Before we get into this Colts game and really start breaking it down, let's do some quick hitters, some feels good, feels bad from around the NFL in this week. It's week 9, I think. Or was it week 10? Week 9?
Week 9.
So yeah, in week 9, I'm going to start. We usually spend a lot of time when we talk about the greater scheme of the NFL. We spend a lot of time on the misses. So I'm going to start feels good. I picked Dallas to miss the playoffs, which feels really good. Not celebrating Dak's injury, but before Dak's injury, they didn't look like a playoff team. I also picked Arizona to sneak in as the 7 seed, and Arizona just stomped all over Chicago. And I don't know if you watched any of that game, but it started like hailing. It was like a torrential downpour in the desert. And the broadcast was like, they have the roof open for some reason because it wasn't supposed to do this. So they've started closing the roof, but it takes 10 minutes to get it there. And so like they kept cutting to the roof just a little bit, like Mowgli. It was kind of funny. But yeah, man, feels good that, Arizona and Dallas, I feel like I hit the nail on the head. I was very correct about that. And I'm looking forward to see what they continue to do, except against the Vikings. Will, feels good for you. Let's start off on a high note. I'm tired of being pessimistic.
This is a feels good based on my predictions. The Eagles have really turned things around after being one of the all-time bad vibes teams the first few weeks. They're now in a position, yes, they're still in second place in the NFC East by half a game, But if I remember right, they've got almost their entire slate of division opponents in front of them, so they'll have plenty of opportunities to make up ground. They're only a half game behind Washington, so way too early to call anything in that division race. But I was thinking, 6 weeks ago that the Eagles were just going to be a dumpster fire, and the fandom in me was happy about that. But now my prediction is looking a lot better. Honestly, same with the Rams.
Yeah, that's a
I
very
had
good
them.
pick.
I had them winning the NFC West, and it was not looking good. And they go into that Vikings matchup 2-4. Kind of wheels are coming off the train a little bit. Now with the win over the Vikings, the win over the Seahawks, even though Puka Nacua punched a guy, they're in a position now where they are similar to Philly. They're only half game out of first with a 4-4 record. That NFC West is weird. First place to fourth place is decided by one game. So who knows? Seattle might end up with 9 wins and take that division, but it's kind of anybody's game. And my Rams pick looked horrible. Not even 3 weeks ago, and now they're in a decent spot.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think I don't want to say impressive, but I think what's impressive about the Rams is their ability. Like, they did kind of just hang around without. I mean, Puka got hurt in the game 1, and then Cooper Kupp got hurt in game 2. So like their ability to just kind of hover and then get healthy, and now, oh boy, here they come. The 500 now, correct? Foul and foul. So, yeah, man, that division's tight. Although McCaffrey's coming back now, so I picked the Niners to win that division. I picked the Niners to be in the NFC Championship game. So I think that that's still viable, but I don't know. Let's get into some feels bad. Honorable mention. We both had the Jags. You had the Jags. I had the Dolphins in the playoffs. Yeah, Florida has let us down football-wise this season. We both had the Bengals making the playoffs, which we're just going to keep hitting these nails over the head. Like the Bengals looked good yesterday against Vegas, but they don't do it consistently. And it's Vegas, who was, one of my shocking playoff teams. But I want to ask you a question because my Super Bowl champion before the season was the Bucks. I want to ask you a question. Do you still feel good about like the Chiefs beating the Lions in the Super Bowl? Does that still ring true to you, or do you, like, as we sit here week 9, kind of the halfway point of the season, do you feel like maybe the Lions should be the favorites to win it all this season?
This is a really interesting debate, and I was actually texting with a good friend of mine from work who is from the Detroit metro area, a big Lions fan. And he's lived through it all. He's not our age, Jordan. He's a little bit older than us, and so he's seen it all, and he's seen the horrible of the Lions. He was, a fan just as much when they made the playoffs and won their last playoff game, 30 years ago or whatever. So he was not as enthralled by my take of the Lions being the best team in the NFL. He believes it's still Kansas City or Baltimore. I would debate him on Baltimore just from the consistency standpoint. I think Baltimore potentially could be, but the problem with Baltimore is amazing, 2 out of 3 times, and then just trash the other time. So it's sort of just this.
They have losses against Cleveland and Vegas. Just for those of you who don't follow Baltimore, those are terrible losses.
And those are 2 teams that are 2-7. So it's not like you're losing games to decent, like those are just horrible losses. One of them was at home. So from that standpoint alone, I would put them above Baltimore. But the Chiefs thing, I'm curious on your take on this, and we're going to watch them tonight. We'll probably get a better perspective on Kansas City after tonight, primetime game. Not that they're any stranger to that, but they're playing at least decent to good Bucks team. Curious to see how that plays out. But I think the curious thing with Kansas City is Mahomes has not played well. The defense is fantastic though. And so there's part of me that just is sort of just resigned to the fact that, man, if the defense is this good and Mahomes has not played great and they're 7-0 and they're finding ways to win every game, not everything's pretty. What's going to happen when Mahomes really turns it on and starts finding his rhythm again and gets more continuity with those receivers? Because they kind of got a new whole complement of receivers and they got Rashee Rice with the injury. So everything's sort of been sort of in flux over there, and they're still finding a way to win every single game. So I'm curious on your perspective on where you think Kansas City is. But to answer your original question, if I threw the Chiefs and the Lions into the Super Bowl today, I do think Detroit would win.
Yeah.
Now, Super Bowl's not for 3 more months. So the reason why at the beginning of the season that I picked Kansas City to win the Super Bowl is because I have a superior belief in Mahomes and Reed and that organization to just continue to put it all together and figure it out. They kind of did this last year, if you remember. It was even worse last year. They didn't look very good. People were thinking, ooh, maybe the Broncos catch them and win the division.
Yeah.
And then the Chiefs, end up running away with the division and beat all the best teams in football in the postseason and win the Super Bowl again. So,
And they haven't lost since Christmas of last year.
exactly.
Which is tough. I think it's funny, and I'm not don't take this as me throwing shade at you, please, but you do have a tendency, I think, of, how do I put this without it sounding like I'm throwing shade at you? You have like it's the like you'll take that if Cousins stayed healthy if Brian Flores was the defensive coordinator 2 years ago, the Vikings would have won the Super Bowl. And it's kind of like an assumption that like everything goes like right. It's weird because you have to treat it that way, if that makes sense. So like it's not necessarily a you thing. It's kind of this, okay, well, like the Chiefs have a really good defense. So if Patrick Mahomes plays Patrick Mahomes level football, they will be an unstoppable, Alabama in its heyday juggernaut. And for some reason, I just like that doesn't happen in the NFL. Like you never see that. For some reason, there's always like it's very out of the ordinary for a team to just play complete team football week after week after week. And so for Kansas City, I feel like if Mahomes does start putting up crazy stats halfway through the season, I feel like the defense would then regress for some reason. I don't know if it's like football karma. If it, I don't know why, but I do agree with you. What is the most dangerous about Kansas City is the fact that their defense is probably the best in the league from a talent and a schematic standpoint. And then Pat Mahomes just does enough. Like he's doing the bare minimum. He's just scooting by at this point. And at some point he will have they will play a complete game and they'll beat somebody, 56-7 or something stupid like that. But I don't think that'll be a consistent thing. I think both sides will kind of teeter-totter. And, us Vikings fans have been driven nuts by that for years where, there were days where the offense scores, 35 points and the defense gives up 36. And it's like, you can't lose that game. And then those days where the defense gives up 6 points and the offense scores 7, and it's like, man, why can't they line up where the defense plays good on the days that the offense plays good? And maybe it has a lot to do with matchups, but I don't know, man. I asked you that question. I hate to answer questions I ask myself, but I think that I think Kansas City should still be the favorites. Like you said, they've proven it. But all right, that's enough NFL talk. If we can move on, we'll talk about this Colts game now. Sure. And again, apologies for just throwing you under the bus there. I wasn't trying to be mean to you. I just,
No, it's a fair assessment, especially because I think the core thing that you're getting at in the takes that I had, you mentioned the Flores one and this Chiefs one, is it's based on an assumption. It's based on an assumption itself or all the variables being the same. And you and I both know that's just not the case.
Absolutely.
I was even commenting to my wife last night watching the game when Chris Collinsworth was saying like, "Oh, I mean, if the Vikings win this one, look at those next 3 road games. If they can just win those." You can't just say that about games in the NFL because and we can, you can even look at the Vikings right now where they beat the Chiefs or the Chiefs. That you beat the Colts yesterday and the next day Kevin O'Connell is talking about injuries to his kicker and his long snapper. And two things that the average fan's going to be like, "Well, who cares?" Those are vital things.
Oh my gosh,
And
it's so important.
if you got Andrew DePaula who needs surgery on that hand and he's going to be placed on short-term IR, you got to get a new long snapper. That is a vital part of an operation that has to be crisp and perfect. And not only that, Andrew DePaula is an all-pro, multi-time Pro Bowler at the long snapper position. And then you throw in the fact that Will Reichard, who has been just nails all season, misses a couple kicks last night. Everyone's worried. Turns out he's got a leg thing, a calf issue that's bothering, or sorry, a quad issue that's bothering him. We don't know the full extent of that yet, but today O'Connell's talking about having to bring in kickers. And those are two positions that are in low contact, parts of the game. So, of course, you're looking at losing your left tackle, obviously, and things can change very quickly in this league. And so just to say that, Pat Mahomes will be X because he was X last year is probably not fair. Maybe it is for a guy of that caliber, but I think what you're getting at is a good criticism because I think making assumptions like the Vikings are going to win these next 3 road games because they're the better team is not necessarily a right perspective to have, because in 2 weeks, who knows? Maybe there's a couple more injuries and they hobble into Tennessee and Nick Mullins is starting, and then all bets are off. So it's a week by week league, and Kevin O'Connell's perspective, it's a day by day contract. So you don't perform one day, things go poorly one day, you could be out of a job the next. So it's very important, especially with all these things, all these variables, to take it, in stride week by week.
No,
so
absolutely.
Right there with you.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about this Colts game. It was a really crappy game for like a while. The entire first half was just bad football from the Vikings. Correction, it was good football from the Vikings and then a bonehead mistake. And if you looked at the time of possession, the first downs, the yardage, if you looked at all those stats, you'd be like, oh, the Vikings are running away with this thing, aren't they? Like, this isn't even close. But, Sam has the really, really bad interception in the red zone. They get the strip sack fumble 6, which is the only touchdown the Colts got. Well, yes, Sam took a nasty hook, but yeah, man, that's a whole other. We're not going to get into that tonight. I think O'Connell put it best. He's trying to get some clarification as to why some QBs, if you believe on them, it's somehow a 50-yard penalty, and for some reason Sam Darnold is just getting head trauma week after week, and the league's not calling it. So I think Kevin's trying to play politically a little bit to try and get some calls. Those should be calls, by the way. But anyway, I'm gonna pat myself on the back here. I really like my take that I told you earlier before the show started. You could see the Vikings fighting this sludge, this slump that they've been in. 2-game losing streak, 1 heartbreaker against Detroit where, it was back and forth. Then you go into the Rams short week. Oh, man, you just get beat, and you just feel bad about it because you didn't play up to your standard. And now this Colts game had all of the writing on the wall for, half of the game. Will Reichard's missing kicks, and Sam's throwing picks and fumbling, and just nothing's going the way you want it to. And then the second half happens. They come out. They put 21 up. The defense gives up 2 field goals and an extra point. If you want to talk about fantasy-wise, 7 points allowed is a pretty good day. Yeah, man, I'm curious to see what your biggest takeaway from this game is. Mine is that is a staple victory for the Vikings. I think O'Connell we established what this team needs to be, and that is tough, both mentally and physically, dominant. And I think they went out in the second half and they said, we're the Vikings. Do you remember when we were beating people by 3 possessions? Let's get back to that. And they got back to it. Well, up 2 possessions, and the Colts, added a field goal late that didn't really amount to anything. So what was your big takeaway from this win?
I really like your take on that. It's well said. It was I apologized to my wife because she watched the whole game with me, and she normally doesn't. Day games are hard, and she's either helping the kids take a nap or whatever, and so generally the noon starts. She might pop down for a few minutes here or there, but I asked her if she would watch the game with me last night, and she obliged. So we, ate some food, had some dessert, had a drink, and she, watched the full game with me. At a certain point, I think it was, early third quarter, I just apologized. I was like, I am sorry you had to watch this weirdness with me. It was the strangest game. Because, you and I have seen this before, Jordan, where, a team will dominate the other team, but it's a lot closer than it feels like, or than it should be. And last night was just strange because the Vikings were dominating really on both sides of the ball. They moved it every time they had it. I don't think they had a 3 and out the whole game. I think even when they did punt, it was 6-play drive and 6-play drive. So like even those times it was, they gained some yardage, they moved the ball, got into Colts territory. But it was just wonky things. It was Will Reichert, Mr. Perfect, needs a haircut now, missing 2 field goals. One was, he could have kicked it left-footed and he probably would have made it. And the other one, we've seen him make those 53-yarders he could do that in his sleep.
And it just came off funny. It didn't hook. You could tell that he was waiting for it to hook, and it just it was just a straight shot. You don't see that.
He was trying to trying to draw it in, and it just looked awful off the foot. I think it ended up being closer than I thought it was going to be, but it never really had a chance.
Yeah.
And then obviously the takeaways, the other just weird thing was the quarterback getting punched in the face and fumbling, and they called the penalty, picked it up. There was just so many odd things that happened. But kind of my actual takeaway, rather than just recounting the weirdness, is I think this team, they played a pretty clean game. And Sam Darnold actually said that. He said, we played a really clean game if you take away my turnovers. And he owned it.
That's a big if.
Took it up. Well, that's the thing though. They played clean football offensively, for, let's see, 68 snaps.
Yeah.
But then the 3 that didn't, one was a missed, face punch, and then 2 were Darnold trying to make throws that weren't there. So really, the whole operation was good outside of one guy. I mean, that sack was not really on Darnold, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But so you look at really the operation in general it was a pretty clean game apart from his mistakes. And I thought the defense, I mean, this was something I was talking about, Jordan, last week, was I was more worried about what the offense was going to do this week. I wasn't too concerned about how the defense was going to perform. I thought they were going to be fine. I thought, these guys have the personnel and they have coaching staff to make the right adjustments, and they did. That wasn't a fluky, 6 points allowed or ever by the defense. That was a dominating performance. 227 total yards. That's like high school stuff. And to see the Colts never really got anything going. That field goal to make it 14-10, that was a 4-play, 2-yard drive. by Indianapolis. It was after that second Darnold pick. And the field goal at the end, I thought they were bailed out because I thought that pass interference should have been waved off because it looked to me like the ball was tipped at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, that's what the announcers was saying.
Yeah. So regardless of, what armchair ref Will thinks, that, that defensive performance was suffocating. And it maybe didn't look as like, oh my gosh, they're destroying them as it did against like Houston, for example, when it just looked like Houston had no chance all day.
Yeah.
But Jonathan Taylor was getting, 2-3 yards on the ground per carry. It was just uncomfortable all game for them. And so I appreciated your take on it of sort of like I don't know what you called it, like, resetting the deck or whatever of getting the team back on track. And
I want to point out. Oh, go ahead.
This the last thing I'll say is just that I think the game, watching it felt gross, but now having 24 hours to digest it, I feel a lot better about the game, just based on really what transpired, apart from just the weirdness of the score and all that.
Yeah, I felt really good that Dallas Tono played half the snaps, and I'm going to say something. This is me. I have two things. I'm going to do two scouting type things. I'm going to talk about the defense, then we're going to scout Sam. All right, new segment, scouting Sam, okay? Sounds very 90s to me for some reason. Like, it sounds like there should be like some, retro, 4x3 graphic, but defensively, I wonder how much of a pass rushing role we should have Van Ginkel in, because he kind of feels like he's more effective on who knows what's going to happen downs. Like those early downs where it could be a run. He's really good in his run discipline or his lane discipline. Could be a pass. If it's something quick, he's always a threat to jump it. He can always drop out and confuse somebody in that regard. But straight up, you versus the left or the right tackle. Go. I don't know. I think that's where his limit is. I'm not saying he's bad at it. I just think that's where his limit is. Dallas Tono last night, every time they sent him at the right tackle, he looked like he was he looked like our best, if not our second best, if not our best pass rusher. He was just like, yeah, I'm faster than this guy. I'm as strong as him, if not stronger, and I'm going to turn that speed into extra power to get around this guy. He didn't get credited with a sack. He had the second most pressures on the team behind Grenard, who I think had 2 sacks in the game. So, like, it was good to see him show up and them start using Ginkel and Dallas Tono in kind of, okay, we're going to swap you guys in. We're going to have both of you play 50% of the snaps. And that got me really excited because I think, like I said, maybe Ginkel's not built for, okay, it's an obvious passing down, go get the quarterback. Maybe he is more of a, we're going to use you to confuse the hell out of a quarterback. And then Dallas Tono, we're going to, take you off the chain and say, go get him. And we're going to let him hunt. So that's my defensive scout. Scouting Sam, I didn't watch the game with my family. And when I don't watch the game with my family, I'm a smout ass. And so Delaney is the opposite. Delaney watches every game with me, unfortunately for her, because I am a negative Nancy, like ultimate pessimist, that whole thing. And so at one point, I just stouted, I was cussing Sam Darnold up and down. I was like, just throw the ball into the dirt. Because he does this thing where he says, oh, nothing's open. I'm going to run back 5. He's like a knight in chess. I'm going to go back 5 and then left or right. Like he tries to do this big out looping scramble away. And I said, just chuck it over your checkdown's head out of bounds or put it at your checkdown's feet, where no one can make a play on it, and it's 2nd and 10, boo-hoo. Oh, it's 3rd and 5, boo-hoo. We'll get, live to die another day. And I felt like he got sacked 2 times on those stupid loop-de-loop, try to, make something happen. He's trying to do too much. So that's the Sam scouting. He did in the second half, stout throwing it at checkdown's feet. Stout throwing it out of bounds. Stout get rid of the ball. Don't take a grounding because you're still in the pocket, but you can you can intentionally ground legally if you're smart about it. So Sam did that. All credit to him. He had a terrible first half. He looked like a pumpkin. He looked like, oh my gosh, this is what everyone was afraid of. And then he played like, okay, we can win playoff games with this guy in the second half. So all credit to him for the bounce back. Credit to the Vikings. I hate talking about my social media posts, but I did put on the show's social media last night, like Kevin O'Connell going into the locker room, and it was a professional wrestler whipping his belt off, like ready to whip somebody with it, because he went in there and he busted some ass. He went in there and he was mad. I think he put the fear of God into his team, and they came out and they played like they played like the good football team that we expect them to be. So that's kind of my big thing. I really want Blake Cashman back. That's going to be my final thought on this game. We really need Blake Cashman back. The defense played outstanding. I'm not saying that, like, imagine that game if we have our best linebacker. I think that, do they hit 200 yards offensively? I don't know that they do, because Jonathan Taylor, I don't think it's going at all if Cashman's in there, versus, having to have like a safety fill in for Cashman, kind of playing small old defense, that kind of thing. So I'll let you get some final thoughts off about this, and then we'll move on and do, the rest of the show.
Yeah, the Sam Darnold thing with the running around, getting sacked thing, that part drove me nuts again yesterday. You just can't have 4 sacks for 30 yards lost. It's just too killer.
Yeah.
Like, I'm okay if you're going to get sacked, just eat it. Take a 5-yard loss.
Tom Brady, you see it coming, just fall down.
Yeah. Or what Sam does really well, and sometimes, like, let's be fair to him, sometimes the step up is not there, so you don't have that ability. But when he steps up in the pocket, good things happen. So even if you then have to take a 2-yard loss, I'd way rather have that than the, oh crap, I'm gonna try and outrun, I can't even remember their names, but the 2 interior D linemen.
Yeah, and it's D linemen coming at full speed ahead, freight train off the rails, versus Sam, who has to turn around, and then he has to go this way. It's like, you're not doing that, man. You're not Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson can't even do that half the time. Like.
Yeah, and the only last 2 things I'll say about Sam, because I think obviously he played a huge role in the outcome of this game. Absolutely. His resilience was a big part of that, and just the way he bounced back. But the only pushback I have to the we can win playoff games with this guy thing is, we can't win playoff games with this guy if he has that many turnover-worthy plays in a game. You just can't have it. You could get lucky, like Jameis Winston did against Baltimore, and have guys drop 3 interceptions. But playoff teams they're going to take advantage of those opportunities if you give it to them. And, Sam, he only threw 4 incompletions outside of those 2 picks. He was highly efficient with his completions. But you just can't have giving the ball to the other team in scoring areas. Or, when you're in the red zone about to score yourself, you just can't do what he did with the ball there. So those sorts of things, like O'Connell said, the aggression is good, but it has to be in the right spots. And Darnold, he has the self-awareness to know where he needs to grow, but I think maybe my worry is, will he be able to grow? So that's the only pushback I have on that. And then just the last thing I'll say about Darnold that I think needs to be said, and it jumped off the screen with that sort of nail in the coffin touchdown pass to Josh Oliver, where it's 2nd and 11, about 2:10 left. The Colts are trying to hang on to that last timeout to, save as much time as they can to go down and tie the game, hopefully, if they force a field goal attempt. And O'Connell shows all of the confidence in the world in Sam Darnold, does a play action roll out to the left, the same movement that he had when he threw the interception to Hawkinson. And he made a play and caught the defense flat-footed and threw it to the guy that no one's going to expect to be leaking to the pylon in Josh Oliver. And so and that was a comment O'Connell made after the game too, in that the confidence that he has in his quarterback is something that he believes can separate this team. Now, it could be the detriment of this team eventually, like I was saying, if he has too much confidence in him and Sam starts trying to play hero ball and you're in the wild card round and you get some savvy DBs picking off his passes. But I just think it is important to note, and it's noteworthy that the coach has this level of confidence, and he rewarded him with that sort of game-winning touchdown pass to Oliver, put the game out of reach at that point. So a weird day from Darnold, but he got the job done when it needed to be completed. So you have to hand it to him in the way that he bounced back.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, and this is fitting because this is going to post, I think we're going to post this on Tuesday since Grades from the Couch. I don't know what's happening with that. So it's election day today as this comes out. So not going to talk about politics, but you will see in these political ads, it's always, whether it's Kamala, whether it's Trump, whether it's your local representation, they always say like, we are for the working man. It's always like I told me and Delaney always joke about, I always joke too, Delaney, about like actors that move out to LA and they get put in like B-roll stock footage and they're like, Mom, Dad, I made it. I'm in B-roll. Because I think that's funny. And so it's always like a guy who looks like me, basically. It's just like a fat white dude with his sleeves rolled up on his flannel standing in a creek with an F-150 behind him going, it's stuff like that. Sam Darnold is the American lower middle class. He makes mistakes. He goes to the casino, loses it all sometimes. But I mean, man, he's fun. He is the definition. He is like, this season really does feel like 09 in the sense that like, it's just so much fun. And it's kind of giving me this childlike, because I was a child in 09. It's giving me this childlike sense of just like, who cares, man? Like, go out there, I do care. I root for them and I get sad and mad and happy and all that. But like, man, Sam slings it and he's throwing up go balls to Jefferson and Jefferson's bringing him in and, everyone's excited and he's throwing touchdown passes to seal it away. Then he's also throwing some of the worst interceptions I've ever seen. Like as a Vikings fan. And I watched Nick Mullins for like 6 games last season and he threw some stinkers. So, that's a testament to Sam. But yeah, man, I think that'll do it. So we'll go ahead. We'll take a break for the podcast audience, YouTube audience. We'll talk to you guys on Thursday to preview the Jacksonville Jaguars game. Will's beloved Jaguars on the dock for next weekend. So we will holler at you guys later. Skol, y'all.